The desert is not empty. By day it looks endless, scorching, and lifeless. But when the sun sinks below the horizon, the desert becomes something else entirely. Beneath the silence, something moves. Beneath the sand, something waits. Out here, where no one can hear you scream, people vanish, camps burn in the night, and creatures that should not exist leave their marks on the living. What if the sound you thought was just the wind was really the dragging of chains in an abandoned mine? What if the glow you saw flicker outside your tent was not a campfire, but the torch of someone who wanted you dead? What if the people who stopped you on a lonely road knew more about your family than you ever did? These are not legends. These are real stories. Welcome to The Price Paid. Subscribe now, if you dare, because once you enter the desert, the horror does not end when the sun comes up. The desert does not forget, and it does not forgive. Tonight, you will hear what lives in the Mojave, what hunts in the darkness, and what secrets bleed through the sands. Stay with us, if you are brave enough. It all began less than a month ago, when the desert sun was still relentless by day, but the nights carried a chill that felt almost supernatural. I was a senior in high school, restless and looking for anything that could shake me out of the monotony of small-town Nevada. Out here, there is not much to do except find your own adventures. And for us, that meant urban exploring. We were never the type to break things or vandalize property. For us, it was about atmosphere, about stepping into forgotten places that seemed to hold whispers of the past. My friends and I would creep into abandoned malls, crawl through broken fences to discover collapsing service tunnels, and wander rooftops and basements that no one had walked in years. It gave us a rush, and in a strange way, it made us feel alive. In our group, there was one person who always managed to find the strangest places, the kinds of spots we never would have discovered on our own. His name was Charles. He was the quiet type, the kind of kid who didn't reveal much about himself, but somehow always seemed to know things. He had this almost obsessive drive to uncover hidden places, and none of us asked too many questions about how he found them. Sometimes it was better not to know. One day, Charles sent us a screenshot from a suspicious Instagram account. The photos were blurry. The page barely had any followers, and the comments under the posts were unsettling cryptic phrases, strange emojis, and hints that people had been to places no sane person would enter. The caption that caught Charles's attention simply read, "Dozens of abandoned mine shafts in the Mojave Desert if you know where to look." That was enough for him. He messaged the account and claimed to have gotten directions to a general area where one of these shafts could be found. He was electrified by the idea, and when Charles was excited, it meant we were going too. That Saturday, it was him, me, and James, our third, and often most skeptical companion. I had the only vehicle fit for the trip, a Wrangler built for off-road driving. So we loaded up and set out into the Mojave, following nothing but a pin drop on Charles's phone. The further we drove, the more isolated we became. We had turned off the main road half an hour earlier, and the dirt path we followed barely deserved to be called a road. The horizon was an endless stretch of beige and burnt orange. No signs, no people, no sound, except the wheels grinding over the dry earth. I kept glancing at my phone even though I knew we had lost service long ago. James, riding in the back seat, grew more and more irritated. He accused Charles of being duped by a troll account, that we were wasting our day chasing ghosts in the desert. But Charles was stubborn, and when he had that look in his eye, there was no convincing him otherwise. So we pressed on. Just as we were about to call it quits, James pointed out something in the distance. At first it looked like a natural formation, just more rocks and sand blending into the slope of a hill. But as we pulled closer, we saw eyed a half-collapsed wooden structure pressed against the side of the slope. Old beams jutted out at odd angles, some broken, some barely holding together. Behind it yawned a dark hole, a mine shaft. It wasn't large, but it was unmistakably man-made. The kind of place that had been abandoned for decades and forgotten by everyone except whatever still lurked inside. Charles's expression was unreadable as he dropped a pin on his offline map and muttered a quiet, "Told you." James rolled his eyes, but even he couldn't deny it. We had found something real. I parked a short distance away on a flat patch of dirt, and we geared up. Charles had even thought ahead to bring masks for us, an unsettling gesture that suggested he had expected dust, mold, maybe even worse. Together we approached the shaft. Up close, it was even more unnerving. The wooden beams groaned in the wind, and the darkness inside felt thicker than it should have been, like it swallowed the sunlight whole. Charles tossed a rock into the shaft. We waited. After 3 metallic clangs, silence. It was deep, deadly deep. We began the descent. The incline wasn't vertical, but steep enough to make every step dangerous. The ground was loose, scattered with debris, and the occasional wooden support beam lined the walls. It was colder the further we went, and soon, the light from the entrance was gone. We were swallowed whole by the earth. At the bottom, the shaft opened into tunnels that split in multiple directions. The place looked like something frozen in time rails, rusting under a layer of dust. Scraps of wood and metal scattered around, shadows pooling in every corner. The air was stale, suffocating, and for the first time I was thankful for the mask. We chose a tunnel at random and started walking. None of us said much, the silence pressing down heavier than the rock around us. At first there was nothing but our footsteps, crunching softly against the dirt. Then we heard it, faint, distant, echoing through the darkness. A dragging sound, something heavy scraping against stone. At first, I thought it was my imagination, but Charles froze. James gestured for us to kill our flashlights, and we did. We stood in absolute darkness. That sound came again. Scraping, dragging, closer this time. The kind of noise that makes your blood run cold because it doesn't belong underground. It wasn't natural. It wasn't right. We waited, paralyzed, counting each beat of our hearts. The dragging grew louder, nearer, until James's trembling hand fumbled with his flashlight. For a split second, light flashed across the tunnel before vanishing. That was all it took. The dragging stopped. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then came the metallic crash. Something dropped deep within the tunnel, and then, from the darkness, a scream. It wasn't human, it wasn't animal. It was raw, guttural, demonic. We ran. Panic carried us through the tunnels, tripping over debris, gasping for air, our lungs burning as the sound of footsteps echoed behind us. Something was chasing us. I was the slowest, my heart pounding so violently, I thought I would collapse. My foot caught on debris, and I stumbled, losing a shoe. I didn't dare stop. The incline back to the surface loomed ahead, and I clawed my way up half barefoot, every step stabbing splinters into my skin. Pain blurred into adrenaline. The only thought in my head was escape. We burst into the night air, gasping, trembling, and bleeding. James shoved me into the Jeep, taking the driver's seat as I clutched my ruined foot. We didn't speak on the drive back, not a word until we reached the hospital. I needed a tetanus shot, stitches, and for days I could barely walk. But the story didn't end there. A week later, James confessed he had lost his wallet near the entrance when helping me out. I picked it up with trembling hands. It was shredded, torn apart by teeth marks too large, too deep, too deliberate to be anything human. Chunks of rubber and fabric missing, as if chewed on by something that should not exist. We left it there and never went back. To this day, I don't know what stalked us in that mine. But every night when I close my eyes, I hear it still, the dragging, the scream, and the footsteps behind me in the dark. I have always been the kind of person who felt more at home under an open sky than inside four walls. Mountains, forests, lakes, those were my vacations, not resorts or theme parks. My girlfriend Tiki shared that same passion for the outdoors, and it was one of the main reasons we connected so easily. We had pitched tents on cliff sides, kayaked across silent lakes, and even hiked up to snowy ridges just to watch the sunrise. But there was one landscape we had never truly experienced together, the desert. It had always been on the list, but the idea of the open, silent, endless dry land was intimidating. When you camp in the woods, there are trees, rivers, and cover. In the desert, there was only space, heat, and the night. 2 weeks ago, we decided to change that. We found a remote site online, miles away from the nearest town. It was public land, perfectly legal to camp on, but had no amenities, no bathrooms, no running water, just fire rings and open ground. That was exactly what appealed to us. More than anything, though, we were excited about the stargazing. Out past the light pollution, we could finally see the night sky the way it was meant to be seen. Even back when we first started dating, we would drive out beyond the city just to lie on the hood of the truck and watch the constellations. This felt like the ultimate version of that. The drive out there was surreal. The last hour was on a dirt road so straight and long it felt like it might never end. No houses, no signs of life. Just sun-bleached rocks and a horizon that seemed to stretch forever. When we finally arrived late that afternoon, we were the only ones there. Not a soul in sight. It was exactly what we'd hoped for. We set up camp, pitched the tent, and unloaded our gear. The heat of the day lingered, but the sky was already turning soft gold as the sun began its slow descent. The first 2 nights were perfect, at least on the surface. Warm days, cool nights, clear skies filled with more stars than either of us had ever seen. We sat by the fire, drinking, passing a small joint back and forth, talking about everything and nothing. We lay on our backs, pointing out constellations, watching satellites drift across the black canvas above. It felt like the kind of moment you'd want to freeze forever. But both nights, just as we were starting to doze off in the tent, we heard something strange. A low, drawn-out sound somewhere far off in the distance. At first, it was faint enough to ignore. It wasn't a coyote howl, not exactly. It wasn't a human voice either. It was something in between a moan, a wail. Tiki would glance at me wide-eyed, and I would force a small laugh, saying it must be some animal we weren't used to. The desert has its own wildlife, after all. We brushed it off and went back to sleep. By the 3rd night, the novelty had worn thin. The air felt different, heavier somehow. Even the stars seemed sharper, colder. Sometime after midnight, I woke up to a sound that snapped me from sleep. Footsteps. Soft but deliberate, crunching slowly over the dry dirt. My heart thudded against my ribs. This wasn't an animal. This was too steady, too slow. Someone was outside our tent. I didn't move at first. Every muscle in my body locked up. I wanted to reach for the flashlight to wake Tiki, but I couldn't. The footsteps stopped a few feet from the tent. Silence. The kind of silence where you can hear your own pulse in your ears. Seconds stretched into minutes. Then, out of nowhere, came the flick of a lighter. A small orange glow appeared through the fabric of the tent, waist height, just a few feet off to the side. Whoever it was held the flame steady, then began to wave it back and forth slowly, like a ritual. I could see Tiki stirring, whispering my name in confusion. The flame grew. It went from a flicker to a glow, then to something bigger, a torch, maybe. And then, without warning, they dropped it. I heard it hit the dirt with a dull thump. A second later, the side of the tent lit up bright orange. Heat came fast, far faster than I expected. The fabric began to smolder. That was the moment instinct took over. I shouted Tiki's name, and she bolted upright.
Hello.
We scrambled, tossing our stuff out of the tent, trying to save what we could. Flames spread like spilled oil, climbing up the nylon. Tiki grabbed a water jug and poured it over the fire while I stomped out the edges. The smoke burned our throats. Somehow, between panic and desperation, we managed to keep it from consuming everything. But half the tent was destroyed. I snatched the flashlight and spun in a slow circle, scanning the darkness. Nothing, no movement, no footprints I could see. Just empty desert, black and endless. Whoever had been there was gone or hiding. Tiki's hands were shaking as she shoved gear into bags. "We need to go," she kept whispering. I nodded, but in which direction? Out here, landmarks are illusions. Every mound of dirt looks like every other. Still, we started walking quickly, guessing at the direction of the truck. My flashlight beam wavered over empty ground. 10 minutes of walking, maybe more, and that sound returned. The same distant scream we had heard the first 2 nights, but this time it didn't stop. It stretched on, rising and falling like an animal in constant agony. Then another scream, from somewhere else, and another. They were coming from behind us, overlapping, echoing through the night. It was no longer one voice, it was many. I didn't speak. I just grabbed Tiki's arm and pulled her faster. My chest felt tight, my ears straining for every sound. The darkness felt alive, pressing closer with every step. Somehow, against all odds, the truck came into view. Relief hit like a punch. We threw our gear into the bed without caring what got crushed or lost. I slammed the door shut and fired up the engine. Gravel spat from the tires as we lurched forward. I wanted to floor it, but the road was rough, every dip threatening to flip us. The screams faded behind us, but not entirely. Tiki sat rigid, her eyes wide, lips pressed into a thin line. I could tell she was holding back tears. My hands were slick on the steering wheel. Every few seconds I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see someone or something running after us. We didn't slow down until we reached the main road, headlights of other cars finally breaking the spell of isolation. Only then did I notice my body trembling. Tiki exhaled a shaky breath and leaned back against the seat, but her hand still clenched the edge of the door. We called the police later, told them what had happened. They took our statement but offered no answers. Out there, miles from the nearest town, there were no cameras, no evidence, no proof, just our word. And maybe that was for the best. Because part of me doesn't want to know what was really out there that night, the footsteps, the torch, the screams. Even now, weeks later, I sometimes wake up at night to the memory of those sounds. The desert is supposed to be empty, but I know better. In the open silence, something was hunting us. And whatever it was not alone. My mother has always been a mystery to me. She was born in northern Mexico, in one of those rough border towns that straddle the line between two countries and two worlds. She left young, came to the United States for school, and never really looked back, or at least that is what she wanted everyone to believe. She built a life here, met my dad, raised me in Arizona. To most people, she was just another immigrant who worked hard and carved out a future. But I knew there was something about her past that she carefully avoided. Questions about her childhood were deflected with a joke. Her expression shuddered whenever the topic of her family came up. My dad once told me she had trauma in her past, and that it was better left unspoken. For a long time, I accepted that. But as I grew older, it became harder to ignore the shadows that lingered just behind her silence. I knew almost nothing about her parents. Once when I was young, she joked that her father's side of the family were politicians, and her mother's side were criminals, but she never could tell which was worse. It was the kind of dark humor adults toss out without thinking, but it stuck with me. And there was one other piece of information, a name. I'll call him R. The name surfaced only once in my childhood, when I stumbled into the living room late one night and found my mom speaking quietly on the phone. She was speaking Spanish, repeating that name over and over, not like she was speaking to the person, but about him. When I turned on the light, she ended the call immediately and fixed me with a look that chilled me. "Go back to bed," she ordered. And I did, but I never forgot. Almost a year ago, I found myself in the kind of situation that forced all those old suspicions to the surface. I had graduated from college and was living back in Arizona, restless and trying to figure out what to do with my life. One weekend, I was driving through the desert to meet up with a college friend. The highway stretched for hours, long and lonely. And to pass the time, I started calling people in my contacts. Eventually, I called my mom. We talked about soccer, as we always did, both of us analyzing upcoming Champions League matches. It was a normal conversation, warm and familiar, until I saw something ahead on the road. Two pickup trucks were parked sideways, blocking the lane. I slowed, thinking it might be an accident, but as I got closer, I realized it was something else. No skid marks, no damage, no signs of distress. Just trucks positioned to stop anyone from passing. Before I could react, another vehicle appeared in my rear view, closing the trap. My stomach dropped. The desert stretched out on either side, empty and unforgiving. I had nowhere to go. 3 men climbed out of the trucks ahead. All were armed. They spread out, moving toward me with the kind of confidence that only comes from experience. My mother was still on the line, but I hadn't told her what was happening. My hands gripped the wheels so tightly my knuckles went white. One of the men tapped the barrel of his gun against my window and motioned for me to get out. I obeyed. What choice did I have? The heat of the sun felt suffocating as I stepped into the open, raising my hands slowly. They spoke in rapid Spanish. I caught none of it. That failure hit me harder than I expected. Growing up Mexican-American, I had always told myself I would learn Spanish someday, but I never did. And now, when my life might depend on it, I was helpless. They stripped me of my wallet, keys, phone, everything I had. One of them slid into my truck, and for a moment I thought it was over. I was about to be left stranded in the middle of nowhere, with nothing but the clothes on my back. But then, something strange happened. The man inside my truck hesitated. He looked down at the phone, still connected to the call with my mother. For a moment I thought he would end it, but instead, he lifted it to his ear. His lips moved. He was speaking to her. My stomach twisted. I could see the others exchange glances. My mother's voice was faint through the glass, urgent and controlled. They spoke quickly, too fast for me to follow, even if I had known the language. But one thing I was sure of. I heard that name again. R. The man repeated it, as if confirming he had heard it correctly. The others approached, and the conversation shifted. The man rolled down the window, speaking to his companions while still holding the phone. Then all 3 of them looked at me, their expressions unreadable. For a long moment I thought it was over, that whatever my mother had said had sealed my fate. Then, just as suddenly, they changed course. They handed me my things back, phone, keys, even my truck. The only thing they kept was the cash from my wallet. As one of them backed away, he grinned at me with a strange amusement and said in a thick accent, "Texas, eh?" R did it. His words made no sense, but the way he said them made my skin crawl. I drove away as fast as I could, my whole body trembling. I kept waiting for a bullet to pierce the back window, for headlights to appear behind me. But nothing came. When I was finally alone on the road, I called my mother back. My voice was shaking as I demanded to know what she had said. She told me she had threatened to call the police, said she was tracking my location, and that she would report them if they didn't let me go. It was a flimsy explanation. I didn't buy it. She was too calm, too rehearsed. And the way they had looked at me, the way they had reacted to her words, it wasn't fear of the police that changed their minds. It was something else, something deeper. I wanted to press her, to demand the truth, but I didn't. She was firm, shutting down the conversation, insisting that was all there was to it. I accepted her story out loud, but inside, doubts clawed at me. I thought about that name, again, about the strange phone call years ago, about the family connections she never explained. My father's vague warnings, her evasive humor, all of it painted a picture I wasn't ready to see. If she had ties to something dangerous, cartels, gangs, criminals, then maybe those ties had never truly been cut, and maybe the only reason I was alive was because of a ghost from her past, a name that still carried weight in the desert. Since that day, I haven't been able to shake the fear. I see the desert differently now. Every stretch of empty road, every pickup truck in the distance makes my heart race. I wonder what would have happened if my mother hadn't been on the phone, if the call had ended seconds earlier. I wonder who R was, and whether he is still out there, pulling strings from the shadows. And most of all, I wonder what my mother really sacrificed to give me this life in America. The truth terrifies me, because if the cartel still remembers her, then they might also remember me. The desert is a place that plays tricks on the human mind. To outsiders, it seems empty. Endless stretches of sand and rock beneath a blazing sun. But those who venture into it soon realize that emptiness is deceptive. The desert is not silent, it is filled with whispers, echoes, and the sense that something unseen watches from the horizon. The three stories I have told are not connected in the literal sense, yet they weave together into a single tapestry of dread, tied by the same thread, the desert itself. It is not just a setting, not just a backdrop. It is an active force, shaping events, hiding dangers, and amplifying the terror of what lurks within. The first story shows us what lies beneath the surface. Abandoned mines scattered across the Mojave Desert are scars left behind by men who dug too deep, then walked away. Yet those tunnels are not empty. The darkness in them has a weight, a presence. For three friends who thought they were simply exploring ruins, the mine became a trap, a place where unnatural sounds echoed through the earth, and where something inhuman screamed in the dark. The shredded shoe left at the entrance was not just evidence of survival. It was proof that something down there was real, something with teeth. The desert swallowed their courage and gave them back only fear. The second story takes us to the surface, to the fragile comfort of a tent under the stars. For the couple who thought the desert would be a romantic escape, it quickly became a nightmare. The stars they had come to admire seemed to stare back coldly, while the ground around them came alive with footsteps. The flick of a lighter outside their tent was more terrifying than any wild animal could have been, because it meant intent. It meant someone was there, watching, waiting. The torch that lit up their canvas was not only fire, but a message. You are not welcome here. And then came the screams, not one but many, rising from the darkness around them. Were they human? Were they something else? In the end, it didn't matter. They escaped, but the desert had shown them its face. It had reminded them that in isolation, there is no one to hear you cry for help. The third story reveals another kind of horror not supernatural, but no less chilling. A young man stopped on a lonely highway by armed strangers. This was not a ghost or a creature, but flesh and blood men with guns, hardened by violence and control. And yet even here, the desert seemed to conspire. It isolated him, left him vulnerable, stripped him of escape routes. Only the mysterious influence of his mother's past saved him, a past tangled in shadows and whispers of cartel ties. The desert here was not only a stage, but a reminder that human monsters often thrive where law and light do not reach. It is not only creatures that haunt the desert, it is men, driven by greed, power, and secrets buried deeper than any mine shaft. When you look at these stories together, a pattern emerges. The desert amplifies fear because it removes everything else. In the city, there are lights, sirens, neighbors. In the woods, there are animals, rivers, even hikers who might stumble upon you. But in the desert, there is only you and the vast, merciless land. When something moves in that emptiness, whether it is a creature from below, a stranger with fire, or a cartel gunman, it feels larger than life. The silence makes every sound louder. The emptiness makes every shadow darker. The isolation makes every danger impossible to escape. There is also a sense of hunger to the desert, as though it takes from those who enter. The mine tried to take the lives of 3 explorers. The fire nearly took the lives of 2 lovers. The cartel nearly took the life of a son, but perhaps claimed something else long ago from his mother. The desert demands a price, and whether you believe in monsters or not, that price is always blood,
Heavenly Father,
fear, or secrets.
I give thanks
No
for
one
your
walks away
boundless
unchanged.
grace.
Those who survive do so carrying scar splinters in their feet, the memory of screams in the night, the suspicion that family ties are darker than imagined. And those scars remain long after the sand has covered up the evidence. There are people who dismiss such stories, who say they are just coincidences or exaggerations, or the paranoia of tired travelers. But anyone who has spent time in the desert knows that its silence is deceptive. You can stand beneath the stars and feel like you are the only person alive, but then a sound will carry across the open land, too far away to see, too close to ignore. You can walk on dirt that seems solid, only to find it gives way beneath your weight, leading down into tunnels no one remembers. You can drive for hours with nothing but the road ahead, until headlights appear in your rearview mirror and you realize you are not alone. The desert does not give answers. It only asks questions, and it demands that you listen. What these stories share is the way the desert strips away the illusions of safety. We tell ourselves we are in control, that with enough gear or preparation we can master the wilderness. But the desert is older, harsher, and indifferent. It does not bend to us. It reminds us that we are small, fragile, and temporary. In its emptiness, it holds echoes of things we cannot explain, creatures that scream in tunnels, strangers who burn tents in the night, men whose allegiances span generations of crime. Whether you believe in the supernatural or not, the desert holds a truth. Danger thrives where no one is watching. Perhaps that is why the desert continues to fascinate us. It is beautiful and terrifying, vast and suffocating, a place of freedom and of entrapment. We go there seeking stars, silence, solitude, but sometimes we find something else. Sometimes we find that the desert has been watching us all along, waiting to remind us that, even in its emptiness, we are never truly alone. The Mojave Mine, the burning tent, the highway ambush, they are not isolated tales. They are warnings. They are the desert whispering the same truth in 3 different voices. And that truth is simple. The desert is alive, and it will not be ignored. The desert has always been seen as a place of emptiness, a wasteland where nothing grows and nothing survives. But the truth is far more disturbing. The desert is not empty. It is filled with silence so heavy it becomes a sound of its own. And in that silence, horrors take root. Each of the 3 stories we have explored proves that the desert is not just a landscape, it is a force that tests those who dare to enter it, and it always exacts a price. In the first story, 3 young explorers believed they were chasing adventure when they descended into the abandoned mine. But what they found was not relics of the past. It was something alive, something that screamed in the dark and left teeth, marks in a shoe as a reminder that they had been hunted. Curiosity may draw us into the depths, but the desert reminds us that some doors are meant to stay closed. In the second story, a couple sought peace and beauty under the stars, but beauty in the desert can turn to terror in an instant. The footsteps, the lighter, the torch, the fire, all of it showed how quickly isolation can shift from freedom to helplessness. When the screams began around them, the desert revealed that even in its vast emptiness, there are things waiting in the dark. It is not only the terrain that is hostile, it is whatever shares that darkness with you. The third story stripped away the supernatural and showed us another kind of nightmare. Armed men in the middle of nowhere lives threatened not by beasts, but by human cruelty. And yet, even here, the desert played its role. Its isolation gave power to those men, and its silence carried the weight of secrets long buried. The son's life was spared only because of ties he did not even understand. A reminder that in the desert, history never really dies, it lingers like a shadow, waiting to emerge.
I can't believe it.
Together, these stories reveal one truth. The desert does not forgive mistakes. Whether it is a wrong step into a tunnel, a night spent too far from safety, or a past that cannot be outrun, the desert amplifies danger until it consumes you. It hides monsters, both human and inhuman, and it offers no escape except survival through fear and instinct. Those who walk away never forget what they saw, what they heard, what they felt breathing down their necks when they thought they were alone. The lesson is clear. Respect the desert. Do not underestimate its silence. Do not assume its emptiness means safety, because sometimes what stalks you there is older than civilization, hungrier than the animals, and crueler than the men who roam its highways. And when the desert chooses to reveal itself, all you can do is run, pray, and hope you make it back to the light. If you found these stories unsettling, remember this: they are true, and they are only the beginning. There are countless more whispers buried in the sands waiting to be uncovered. Join us, and you will hear them all. Subscribe to The Price Paid, because only together can we face the darkness that waits beyond the horizon.